Hey, Brad, I've been thinking about building a render cluster.
As one does 2 days before Thanksgiving.
Well, so, we're in the final push on the Anacrusis, and one of the things you do at the very end of a game dev cycle is bake a whole buttload of light maps. And, light maps aren't like they're not as intense as they were in, say, the Quake days when Carmack bought a SGI workstation that took 3 days to bake a light map on a single level or anything like that.
I was going to say, this is taking me back to the days of reading plan files, or you're going to have to get a 2 CPU deck alpha to do this. And then running 2 CPUs, both running at 400 megahertz.
I'm going to tell you, I'm probably running a little bit faster than 2 CPUs running at 400 megahertz these days.
Fair.
But even with the 13900K and the 4090, like it takes a while to bake a light map on a decent sized Anacrusis level. And I was looking around, I was like, I have my old computer with a 3080 Ti, and then I have the kiddo's computer with a 3080 Ti. And Unreal has this thing called Swarm that's just built in, that if I run a coordinator on one of the machines and give it some hard drive space, and then run the Swarm client and put the Swarm on an Unreal on each of the other computers, then it'll just, do the math.
Yeah, I thought this was going to have to be some ramshackle thing that was going to take like days of setup. I did not realize they had built it in that elegantly that it's just like run an installer on other machines, and now they're helping you make a game.
Well, so the thing I haven't sussed out yet, and I have got there's a lot of docs. It is going to be a little ramshackle, just to be clear. But the thing I haven't sussed out yet is if it actually will do, if I have to put the projects on all the other machines, because the project's like 500 gigs, so it's pretty big.
That's a lot, yeah.
And I like, at that point, the cost and time of getting the project on all of the different machines, including like, I don't think my daughter's SSD is big enough to hold 500 gigs of project and the stuff that she uses her computer for, honestly. So there may be no upside. Like, I'm kind of curious if running this on the 3080 and the 4090 at the same time is going to give me any appreciable benefit, because the 4090 can do like 1200 rays per second or something, 1200 megarays per second.
1200 megarays.
It's very much like it's like a Sega ad from the 90s. We do more megarays than NES don't, or something. Anyway, the point is, I don't know if there's going to be an upside to running this on last gen, not high end hardware, when I'm comparing it to what I'm running on the main PC. So I might set it up on just 2 PCs and see what happens. And then if it's faster, I'll run on the other. But also, by the time I get it done, probably it's going to will be done, because there's like 25 levels and I'm through 5 of them already. So
getting down to it, what does it have to run on the GPU?
No, you can do it on the CPU, but it just takes it takes like 10 hours per level on the CPU. Still, it's substantial.
What card is in your daughter's machine, out of curiosity?
She's a 3080, I think.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Look, when like good things run downhill in this house. So
fair. Yeah, I get it. I know how it goes. I would love to hear about the outcome of your growing network of is this rig going to achieve sentience at some point? I don't know.
I hope not. If I have an hour or two to set it up this weekend, I'll put it together and we'll see. Just I even if I don't get it done and use it for the actual game, I might set it up and do it just to have the experience, because it's like literally in like 96 when I was making Quake Rocket Arena levels, Quake 1 Rocket Arena levels, I was like, I have 2 computers here. I could do this on a cluster, and I could never make that work. The Quake light map rendering cluster thing.
There's also just something so highfalutin about the word cluster. Are you doing HPC in there? Is this high performance computing, or this is like straight up research?
Look, I just need more GPUs, man. Just give me some more. Like I need a workstation board with like 17 GPUs in it, and then I'll let it rip.
What if you had like 6 PCIe slots and you just put a bunch of cards in there?
I have all these cards.
See, that's the thing. When you said you were going to make a cluster, I thought, I was like, okay, he's going to spend company money and order like 5 more computers and they're all going to be identical. But the idea that this is just a makeshift cluster, including your daughter's computer, is amazing.
Well, I mean, but that's how it works at game studios, right? Like that's what it's for. It's for like everybody leaves their computer on when they leave at the end of the day at a game studio. And then you can do a CPU light bake in like 4 hours instead of 30.
Oh, wow. Right? Yeah, because you already got all that nice workstation hardware just sitting around.
Or just a bunch of off-the-shelf commodity computers, because that's the way most I don't want to. Game developers don't have workstation money usually.
Look, the definition of workstation is a bit flexible these days, let's say.
That's true. Welcome to Brad and Will Made a Tech Pod. I'm Will.
I'm Brad. Hello.
Hello, Brad.
Hi.
Hi. It's early. We're recording early for the first time in quite a while, but it's a busy day today.
This might be the earliest we've ever recorded. We said 7 a.m. It is now 7:42.
No, we recorded some Foss Pods with people in Europe at 7 a.m.
Of course. Or
6 in a couple of cases, I think.
Have we ever done a 6? Maybe.
Some of those people were like, I would like to record at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And I was like, oh, God, okay. That sounds great.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, we're here. We're talking about something open source again, I guess.
Yeah. Adjacent.
Yeah, the Valve was kind enough. Well, the Valve last week announced a new Steam Deck, the Steam Deck OLED. It's like I would call it a mid-season refresh. I think it's
a
like
Rev.
Yeah, it's like the 1.5 version. It's not quite a 2.
Yeah, definitely not.
But it's like that. It's like that Switch refresh, that nice one that you looked at and you're like, man, that's a pretty nice looking Switch. But we're also getting near the end of the Switch generation. Maybe I don't know if I'm going to get an OLED Switch now. And then my wife was like, hey, I want a Switch. Will you get me that new OLED one? I was like, yes, I will get you that new OLED one.
Now you don't have a choice.
Yeah. So
yeah, I actually said that on the Next Lander podcast when we talked about this thing, how much it's like the Switch OLED. Like it's actually kind of shockingly like it, like slightly bigger OLED screen, slightly just barely faster internals, better battery life a little bit. But, it's like kind of almost all the bullet points are just slightly better.
Well, so on this one, it feels like they wanted to do the OLED version, which makes a lot of sense because some of the competitors that are coming out in the wake of the launch Steam Deck are OLED, and there's real benefits to that. The rest of it, I think, follows on from, hey, if you're going to redesign the board to work with OLED, the box to work with OLED, then you can do things like, update the SoC and change the way the power supply works and kind of stuff like that. In the internal charging ecosystem, rather. So yeah, not the 2.0. It's a mid-season refresh with a really nice screen. The battery life is slightly better because there's more space. The package for an LCD versus the package for an OLED takes up less volume inside the box. The box is essentially identical. Like the OLED one has a red button on top, and the not OLED button has a not red power button.
That's how you know.
Yeah, that's the way you can tell. The sticks are a little bit different. They did a couple other things, like the first Rev sticks tended to collect skin cruft around the top isn't a solid piece because it has those touch sensitive sticks. So like they redesigned the top of the sticks so they theoretically will collect less skin goo in the groove there.
I don't want human on my electronics. I don't know about you.
This is a personal device, so it's my human, so I'm okay with it. But
I don't even like that. But anyway,
look, I get the brush out and brush the goo out every once in a while. So
okay. So is the form factor identical enough that you could just put it right in a case for the original Steam Deck and it would fit without issue?
Okay, so it weighs 5% less. I think that's the only way you could distinguish it from the outside if you didn't look at the red button.
All right.
The form factor is identical. The ergonomics are the same. The touchpads are like I said, some of the mechanics inside are a little bit different, but for the most part, everything feels exactly the same. The buttons feel the same. The D-pad feels the same. The sticks feel the same. The touchscreen, the screen is a little bit larger because it is an OLED. So it's 7.4 inches versus 7 inches. It's the same resolution.
Which is also like the Switch OLED, I believe.
Yeah, it's weird because a lot of reviewers are reporting the resolution is 1280 by 720. The Steam site reports the resolution for both devices is 1280 by 800. I don't exactly know it's hard to tell on the internals what is actually true. The OS I think reports 1280 by 800. So
okay, yeah, I think that was the same as the original. So yeah, also just like the Switch OLED, it's slightly bigger screen but same resolution, so the pixel density technically is just slightly lower, but it's probably not noticeable in practice.
Well, and the because it's an OLED, the blacks are really, really good. So you get like less dithering on like dark scenes and stuff like that. Like for example, the launch screens, it has like little like pre-roll, like the little logos that play when you turn on a console. You can download a whole buttload of those. There's a couple of them that are on solid black backgrounds. And so when you turn it on laying in bed at night, it just looks like a Steam logo floating in space in front of you in a dark room. Basically, it's amazing.
That's pretty good. Yeah. I don't have a Steam Deck, but can I just shout out Valve for allowing you to customize the boot up animation, because I've never seen that in any kind of console like device before, and that's amazing. But B, even having a boot up animation at all, because I don't know why every other console has basically, except kind of the Xbox, has abandoned the lost art of the console boot up animation, but I love them, and it's the saddest thing in the world that nobody does them anymore.
I assume it's because like they don't need them anymore, right?
I guess. I don't know.
They do them, but like with the sleep states, you just don't see them very often. Like my PlayStation.
Well, PS5 has nothing now, or it just it has the little sparkly
sparkles
as it fades into the login screen, but I'm talking like a Gala logo and animation treatment with cool music kind of thing, like the GameCube, the 360, PlayStation 2. Like there have been such good examples of those. Anyway, bring them back, please.
So Valve did these in the most Valve way possible by making part of the Steam Points store. Mm-hmm. So your loyalty points can be traded in for different launch screens.
Wait, can you not just like copy your own file in?
You can also copy your own files, but like the ones that they made are pretty. Like there's like they're pretty good. You can go look at them even if you don't have a Steam Deck, I guess is what I'm saying.
Okay.
You can also get replacement keyboard skins for at the Point Store as well. Sure. Anyway, so that's it. It's a little bit early for this, like in the life cycle, except for that, PC life cycle is shorter than console life cycle. The Steam Deck was announced in July of 2021. I think in a non-pandemic world, they probably would have started selling them then. They shipped units in February of 2022. Like they were widely available by that summer. I got mine in June. And a bazillion, like multiple companies have shipped competitors, like big companies, small companies. There's a ton of weird stuff out of China that is like small PC that runs Steam OS kind of, and that you can do Steam Deck-y stuff on.
Yeah. Like Asus put out the ROG Ally. Lenovo just put out the Legion Go, which I saw one of those in person at PC World, and they are gigantic.
Yeah.
Aya Neo is one of those companies in China that has, I believe it's Aya Neo. If you're on our Discord, go to the Mister and Emulation channel and scroll back a little bit. Aya Neo just announced like 8 or 10 different new handhelds, all in different form factors. Like there's one that looks like a Game Boy. There's one that's got a slide on it, like the old Nokia or T-Mobile like Sidekick, and stuff like that. Like they are going ham on just like every kind of handheld you can. Handhelds are big business. All of a sudden. This is what
the China manufacturing process can do. It's kind of remarkable. But anyway, and then they announced the OLED in November 16th. So
that's shorter than I like. I knew it hadn't been that long, but when you put these dates out like this, like Steam Decks have only been in people's hands for about a year and a half, and now here we are with a
like
refresh.
I said, I think in a non-pandemic world, we would have had Steam Decks 6 months earlier than we did, probably. Yeah. Right.
I think maybe we'll get into this as we talk about different aspects of this thing, but I wonder if there are supply chain realities that made it more expedient to just go ahead and do this. And it's not just purely they pushed for this, but it was more like, oh, we should do this because the parts are now available and maybe even cheaper.
I think that so Gamers Nexus did a good teardown, which we'll talk about in a minute, which we can get into some of that stuff. But I guess before we go any further, I should have led with this. Steam Deck, if you don't know, is a handheld gaming PC that costs like around $300, $500, depending on which model you get. And it has an AMD SoC system on a chip in it running Arch Linux. And it uses this software emulation layer called Proton that basically lets you run normal ass Windows games on Linux in a performant way. So you can play not quite all, but a lot of your mostly single player Steam games on Linux relatively easily. And then I also played like Diablo 4 before it was on Steam. I was able to like load BattleNet on the Linux box and played Diablo 4 on my Steam Deck as well this summer. So like,
God, it's still so weird that Diablo 4 is on Steam. But anyway,
I mean, that's a whole other thing. Like, like the fact that like every Call of Duty that wasn't on Steam before is also available for the Steam Awards this year because it was newly released on Steam this year. Yeah. Anyway, so
okay. Also, let me add to that real quick. You can also just run Windows on your Steam Deck.
You can. When I first got it, I probably would have said, "Hey, you should maybe think about this if you're serious about playing like games that have, for example, DRM or anti-cheat that doesn't work on Linux, right? Because like easy anti-cheat, a lot of the anti-cheat stuff doesn't, just like because it's kernel level, it's not going to work with Proton ever, and the developers have to actively support it by writing Linux runtimes. Which weirdly, Tim Epic isn't going to write easy anti-cheat binaries for Linux so that Fortnite can run on the Valve Steam Deck. I don't understand why. Anyway, the hardware changes. Like I said, physically the shell feels the same. It's literally 29 grams lighter. That's less. That's about the amount of coffee that I put in my grinder every morning. I can't feel 29 grams in my hands. Really, I think mice are my context for this recently. I think like about 30 grams is like a decent reduction in mouse weights because people care about mouse weights a lot these days. Yeah, but not a huge one. My mouse weighs 58 grams, so it's two of this difference. That's too light. That thing's going to blow away in the wind. Yeah. It turns out it's been on my desk for a while. Anyway, the screen's 7.4 inches versus 7 inches. It's the same size cutout in the case. I bought a new screen protector for this one and just jammed it on there. It's the same exact one as for the Steam OLED, the non-OLED Steam Deck. It has, the way they describe the brightness of the OLED screen is that it's 600 nits, but it can spike up regionally to 100 in different places for bright areas. To 1,000 in bright areas. Oh, 1,000 is not. That's no slouch. I have never. I turned it up to full brightness once and then immediately turned it down, Brad. Yeah, like 1,000 on a handheld, a battery operated handheld is quite good. I think my TV, which is pretty bright as TVs go, tops out at like 1,500. I think. Yeah, it's like 1,000 to 1,500 is the range for TVs. OLEDs, I think, are a little bit dimmer than LCDs usually. Yeah. It has a much wider gamut than the original OLED, the original LCD Steam Deck. It's 102% of the DCI P3 gamut versus 48.5% on the old screen. Apparently, you can beat 100% of DCI P3. Apparently, yes. And it supports HDR, but only, at least for right now, only in the Steam like 10-foot UI, not on the Steam desktop. Because this is a Linux machine, you can actually shell out to the Arch desktop and do like Linux stuff if you want to install emulators or whatever. The HDR stuff doesn't work there. It's worth mentioning, I think that this is the first HDR implementation for Linux that they did for this device. Yeah. As a common daily Linux user, I would believe that had not been approached before now. Well, but I mean, it's important for games because games are kind of the one of two real HDR applications that are fairly mainstream right now. The other one being movies. That means that the other OLED Steam Deck competitors don't necessarily support HDR in your games in the same way that this device does. Yeah. That's actually one of the cool things about the Steam Deck and Valve's contributions to Linux, which you will hear more about in the forthcoming FOSS-Pod. I swear it's still coming. But they are driving a lot of development of various Linux features and subsystems forward a lot faster than they would be otherwise because they have the weight of this device and its success behind them. Exactly. So there's a conversation often about the resolution. Well, okay, first off, the OLED blacks are like, I have a phone that's an OLED screen, I guess, which is my main interaction with OLED screens. I guess I've had VR headsets that had OLED screens. I think the blacks are crazy good. Mm-hmm. Like, it is so nice when you look at this thing, especially in a dark room. It's like looking at, I don't know. It's hard to describe how good it is to look at. It's like looking into the void. Yeah. There's no, you forget how much your brain filters out the dithering that happens on most LCD screens in the dark grays to black areas. And that just doesn't exist on this thing at all. Yeah. Yeah. It's really lovely. There are battery life benefits, right, in a mobile device to having parts of the screen that can just turn off when not needed. Yeah. It's like the Discord trick to make your Discord go to OLED friendly mode on the phone, where like the black pixels just don't take any energy to render. It doesn't support the display on the device doesn't support variable refresh rates. It does support multiple refresh rates off of the 90 refresh rates. People are saying you can go down to 20 hertz with some hacks. I think out of the box, it does 30 and 40 and 60 and 90. Okay. If you plug it into the dock and plug it into a TV that supports variable refresh rate, it will support variable refresh rate in that mode. So you can do an external variable refresh rate display, but not the internal screen. Okay. Before we move on from the screen, I'm going to pepper one of my supply chain questions in here about OLEDs. Uh-huh.
Do you think, are we getting to the point where supply chain realities are such that it actually is more cost effective, or like the economies of scale are now there where it makes more sense to go OLED than LCD? I don't know if we're quite at that tipping point yet, but another thing informing this question is like leaks are coming out about the next iPhone SE, which is Apple's low end budget iPhone.
Yeah.
And the rumor is they're going to an OLED screen on that thing as well. And that made me wonder, like, okay, is it actually just more cost effective to build with OLED now, or are we getting there than LCDs?
I think the benefits are the lack of the smaller volume inside the device.
Sure.
So if you're talking about something that's small, like a phone, that lets them increase the power of the CPU, especially on the SE, which is a relatively small volume compared to modern phones. That means that they can bump up the CPU, APU, or SoC in that device higher to have a higher performance and higher TDP, and still have decent battery life would be my guess. Because the battery is substantially larger. Hold on. It's a 50 watt hour versus a 40 watt hour battery in the new one, in the new Steam Deck OLED, which is a 25% increase in volume for the battery, because it's not like the density's gotten better on the energy there. So like that means that battery is a lot bigger than it was previously.
Yeah, maybe it's the other benefits of OLED more so than cost. Because I mean, I'm sure OLEDs are getting cheaper to manufacture with, but I'm sure LCDs also continue to drop. So maybe it's not a cost thing; it's more just the other benefits are.
Yeah, I mean, OLEDs are definitely like, I think the delta between the two is lower than it's ever been now, and that's going to continue to be true every minute of every day from here forward, right? Yeah. But I think. I don't think that there are easy answers for manufacturing on this kind of stuff. Like it is, because like they get better battery life because of the OLED blacks. They also get better battery life because of the increased battery size. But that means that they're then going to have to spend more on the battery. So it's going to like, there's a ton of downstream costs, and they had to completely redesign the inside of the box basically. Right. Do we want to talk about the resolution? I feel like the resolution comes up a lot. And I kind of felt like, oh, it's a bummer this isn't a 1080p thing until I started using it. And then when I realized where the limits of power for the SoC are, like 1280 by 800, 1280 by 720 makes a lot of sense, I think.
Yeah.
For games.
Yeah. Like, I mean, that's the thing. Would you really want it to be 1080p with the realities of its performance, even at 720 already?
I think at the screen size you're dealing with on this thing, especially, running at 720p, running at 1280, 1080p would eat significant battery for very little benefit.
Yeah.
Especially in a world where you can run FSR on this device and get like upscaling and all that. Like it doesn't make a ton of sense. Anyway, so the screen's real good. Like it's the screen is fantastic. If you have a first gen Steam Deck, I don't think the screen is a reason to like, the screen is good. It's the best thing about it. I don't think it's, hey, I got to get rid of my old Steam Deck and get new Steam Deck territory. I think you hold off and wait for the second rev, or maybe the third, depending on how you use it, right? Gamers Nexus did a really good teardown and highlighted a bunch of stuff that's changed that Valve didn't actually talk about on their press materials. They are doing a new rev of the APU, of the AMD APU. It's the same basic APU. It's on a smaller process. It's on TSMC's N6 process, which means it's going to be more efficient, and probably because of the way thermal throttling works on these kinds of APUs, probably means you get a little bit more performance in the same thermal envelope. But like not, suddenly your game that was running at 10 frames a second isn't going to run at 60 frames a second. No. It's going to run at 12 frames per second now.
It's a pretty negligible, and that's another place where the Switch refresh, the OLED and the light also got a slightly die shrunk. I should have pulled a news story on this, but I read about this 6 nanometer process with TSMC in the context of the recent PlayStation 5 models. Mm-hmm. Apparently TSMC has some process where 7 nanometer designs can be shrunk down to 6 without much work on the part of the client.
Without having to retool the whole thing. That's nice.
Client is the word, I guess. Like they don't have to like substantially redesign the chip to do that. And I believe that's what happened with the newer PS5s as well. So that seems like something maybe we'll see more of.
Yeah, they described the Steam Deck SoC as semi-custom, which to me means that they have put like Valve has said, hey, we want a couple of things that aren't standard tacked onto this. The one thing that is the big win about the smaller process too, because of the lower thermals on the CPU portion, is that the GPU doesn't clock down as much when it hits the 15 watt max draw. Like that actually can have some fairly measurable impacts on games that were GPU limited.
Yeah, I wonder if that means like not substantially higher highs in the frame rate, but maybe steadier lows. Like maybe your kind of 1% lows are more consistent if you're not having it clock down a bunch.
It's not something that I have been able to consciously notice, switching back and forth between them playing the same game. If that helps.
Sure. I mean, that's probably good to state, like I'm sure. In fact, I've seen a fair amount of hand wringing from people who feel like they have not had a Steam Deck for very long, looking at this thing going like, oh, but maybe it's important to say like, hey, this thing is better, but it's not some radical leap forward.
Yeah. In terms of like performance difference between this one and the old one, I don't like it. It reminds me of like a 3DS refresh almost, right? When like they added the DSi stuff and you're like, oh, this is cool. It works in 2 games. Mm-hmm. It's a similar
a camera on here that they will never, ever use.
Yeah, exactly.
This is more substantial than a camera, of course, but
it is, but also it is quite literally, I can switch back and forth between them. And unless I'm looking at the red button on the top, I won't, or the finger crust in the sticks, I won't know the difference between the two by like other than this. Okay, the screen's pretty noticeable depending on whether the game you're playing supports HDR or not.
Yeah.
They redesigned the board a lot. Steve gets into this a lot in the Gamers Nexus review teardown. If you're interested, you should take a look at it. They basically disassembled both Steam Decks and laid out all the parts side by side and talked about what's changed in them, all the way down to like the board has the previous boards had 4 memory chips on them. These have 2. There's more memory bandwidth because they're running at 102 gigabytes per second versus 88 gigabytes per second, which I think is a 16% jump. The battery's bigger. The cooler is flipped upside down. So his thought was that they thought that having the intake facing hot stuff would pull some air over them, and that maybe in practice it didn't actually do much. So they flipped it around so it was easier to assemble or disassemble or whatever, maybe quieter. I do notice that when the fan spins up, it's a little bit quieter than the old one. But that could also just be lack of dust and cruft in the blades, making the old one louder.
Lack of human in there.
Look, man, we are constant gross. Humans are constant gross machines.
Yes. I happened to be at PC World the day that they announced this thing, and I was talking to Adam about it, and he commented just offhand. I didn't actually ask him to elaborate. He commented that extra memory bandwidth would especially matter with an APU, and I was trying to figure out why. Is it maybe just because all the compute is on one chip, so having CPU and GPU both able to access memory faster is a boon?
Yeah, it's because the GPU doesn't have discrete memory, so the bottleneck is harder on the APU. Also, it's worth saying pretty much every Unreal 4 game ever is memory bandwidth bound on high end GPUs. I don't know how it works on the APU. I haven't actually thought about that a lot, but like more memory bandwidth is always good. Adam is correct about that for sure.
Yes.
The other thing that they did that I think is a pretty substantial change that they didn't. I was surprised they didn't talk about it because it's kind of the first Steam Deck is bad at charging. Like if you're charging it when it's off, it's great. If you're charging it and playing at the same time, it gets weirdly hot. Like not like dangerously hot, but like I feel like at this point we know how chargers work, and like devices shouldn't have to spin up fans to charge, but it definitely was running hotter when you plugged it in. If you're playing for a long time and needed to top off the battery, and it charged kind of slow. I mean, it's a big battery, but with a 45 watt charger, I mean, I guess the math works out, but it felt like it always took at least 2 hours to charge, which is kind of a lot. The new board, the charging infrastructure on it is such that it has double the ingest components in whatever the bits are that make the electricity go into the device so that it can charge and run more effectively. And it doesn't seem to get as hot when you're doing that, which is nice, even when you're playing a kind of intensive game. there's a bunch of other stuff that they put in the box that's kind of minor. There's a longer power cable on the OLED models, which is 2.5 meters versus 1.5 meters before, which sounds stupid, but the extra meter means you can sit on a chair and have the power cord running into the device if you're charging while you're playing, and it's not a hassle. It's still a 45-watt charger. Wi-Fi jumped from 5 to 6E, which is, it's hard to tell, but I think it's making downloads a little bit faster. They also have flipped on the download the game from your Steam install on your desktop thing across the local network lately, which is hella fast.
That's awesome.
So, yeah,
that's probably runs at line speed practically.
I think you're saturating the SSD on the Steam Deck probably would be my guess.
Oh, sure.
Or the MMC card if you're using one of the MMC card slots.
What Wi-Fi do you have in your house right now?
6E. I have two APs. One's a 6 and one's a 6E.
Oh, okay. Oh, can you mix them safely like that?
Yeah. I guess
it just hands off to whichever.
Yeah, it just whichever node you're on gets the fast. The 6 and 6E. It's the throughput isn't that much better. It's the congestion relief stuff. I just bought the 6E one because it was cheap when I needed a second one. It was on sale. Let's see, there's a 2-part case now. So like the old case was pretty bulky and was designed to carry it around and be droppable and all that. It was one big piece. The new one, you can pull out the inner liner on and it makes it just like a sleeve to keep it from getting scratched up if you want to chuck it in like a messenger bag or a backpack or something.
That's smart. Does that case come with every SKU?
Comes with every SKU.
Wow, that's nice.
They ship it with all.
That's nice.
Their packaging is really like, I always feel weird talking about packaging, but as we've made more environmentally friendly packaging, it's really good. Their packaging for the actual, like if you have it on the shelf in a store, is just that case with a cardboard sleeve around it and like a Loctite thing on the zippers so you can't unzip it. The shipping box is just slightly larger than that. Like it's like that hangs in a frame suspended in one box. So it's hardly any cardboard. There's no plastic or stuff in the shipping stuff, which is well done. There's a special limited edition version that has transparent shell. Mm-hmm. My question was, hey, is there going to be an atomic purple one? To which I got smiles and like polite chuckles. Mm-hmm. And it still supports.
Please don't follow the analog model of a bunch of limited edition colorway drops. Valve's not like that. They're not going to be like that.
Well, I hope not, but like also I would love to have a orange one, like GameCube orange one.
Sure. Sure. I bet someone can hook you up.
There's a reasonably robust market for aftermarket parts for these things already.
Oh yes, I believe that.
So you can and they do embrace the iFixit lifestyle. Like there are guides for you can buy replacement parts, you can upgrade stuff, you can upgrade the SSD internally, you can buy replacement sticks, buy replacement screens, buy replacement motherboards, the whole thing. Like it's user serviceable in a way that is shocking for this kind of device. And it still supports all the stuff that made the old Steam Deck awesome, like Emu Deck and Chiaki, which is the stream from your PS5 thing. Game Pass streaming still works. Moonlight works. All of the stuff that you're accustomed to is still good there.
Yeah. Speaking of storage, it seems like they're de-emphasizing the eMMC storage in the product line.
Yeah.
Now.
So one of the things I got watching Steve's Gamers Nexus teardown and this move away from the eMMC thing. First off, I had a 256 gig model original OLED original LCD Steam Deck that I bought. I put a big MMC card in it. Really couldn't tell a difference between the MMC and the SSD in terms of like load times. Install times were way worse on the MMC.
Sure.
But like when you're playing the games, it wasn't a big impact. The thing that was rough about the MMCs is that like those cards are just not super reliable.
Oh, sure.
So
it's just a big SD card.
Yeah, it's a big SD card that like it's probably fine until it isn't, right?
Yeah. Yes. You want to talk through the pricing real quick and what they've done to I think we might have skipped over that part.
Yeah, I was going to save that for the end of this right here, but no, that's fine. So there's 3 models now that are new. They're also selling the old 64 gig eMMC models for $350 while they last. but they aren't going to be making more of those. It's $450 for the 512 gig OLED, $650 for the 1 terabyte OLED, 256 gigabytes for the LCD version. 256 gigabyte LCD version is $400.
Okay.
So it's like a $50 bump for storage and OLED, which feels like a pretty good deal to me.
For only another $50, once you're already up to $400, it's hard not to get the OLED one.
Yeah. At the
Double
same
storage,
time,
all the other benefits.
At the same time, that 64 gig eMMC old model, if you can get it for $350, you should check this before you buy it. But my understanding, at least at launch, was that they still had an SD slot, an NVMe slot in them. So you can, if you're comfortable cracking it open and taking it apart, you can buy those SSD. You can buy a 2 terabyte SSD for like $150 now. So when you want storage, you can chuck it on. Somebody
on the Discord, it was a quick sale, $89 for a crucial 2 terabyte NVMe. It's back up to like $110 right now, but like the SSDs are getting so cheap that a 350 Steam Deck and a cheap SSD would be a pretty good deal.
Yeah, and you can buy them separately, so you can buy one now and then buy the other one later when you want it. I will say, like I said, the compromise on the eMMC SD card is install time, not at play. So it's not bad. My intention is to put an SD card with a whole bunch of ROMs in when I install EmuDeck on the new one. So
$200 for the leap from 512 to 1 terabyte OLED is a bit much. Are they still doing weird stuff like, like better reflective coating on the screen for the top tier one and like exclusive keyboard skin?
It has the anti-glare treatment on the high end one. The limited edition version, which I think maybe is already sold out, I'm not sure, was another $50 on top of the $650, I think. I feel like I get why this happens, and it's because this is the phone model leaking over, where storage bumps are a thing that people understand, so you charge more for the expensive one.
Mm-hmm.
Having a lot of space is really convenient on it.
Yeah.
It's still unclear to me how long these devices are going to last for people. Like for me, and we can talk about this in a minute, if you're playing games on the device, like we're starting to already see the limits as we start to see the first, I want to say current gen only console games come out. So like, I think when we see, for example, Spider-Man 2 land on this thing next year, Miles Morales runs great on it. Miles Morales and Spider-Man, which were PS4, PS5 cross-gen titles, look fantastic, play great, really, really wonderful. My guess is that the PS5 exclusive games and the Xbox Series exclusive games are going to start having problems on these.
Yeah, I would believe that. I was lucky enough to be on the Full Nerd yesterday with Alex Battaglia from Digital Foundry.
Oh yeah,
and I posed the thought experiment to him of, when do you think a game ships with only ray tracing support? I think I was going for the kind of maximal question of like, when do you see a game with no rasterized lighting at all? But I was like, oh, is that 10 years, 15 years? But he actually, he made it a more realistic answer of a game that requires ray tracing, not necessarily that is pure ray tracing, but he actually said like 1 to 2 years he sees games coming out that are going to require hardware level ray tracing. And Spider-Man 2 came up because on the PS5 there is no, even the most reduced performance mode on the PS5 version of Spider-Man 2 still has like ray trace reflections and requires some level of ray tracing hardware. So like, yeah, this does seem like the kind of thing. I don't know what feature set that APU supports, like what level of RDNA features they have in there or whatever, but like it does seem like we're going to get to the point where we're going to be back to the old, like the pixel shader days again, right? Of like, hey, if your GPU doesn't have pixel shading support, you're not going to play Doom 3, right? Like games are going to start requiring actual features on newer GPUs at some point.
I mean, so I've been thinking about minimum spec requirements for PC games lately and spending a lot of time at Steam looking at the hardware survey results as a result of that. Like you have to remember the 2080 is a 4-year-old card now.
Yeah.
Right. Like we're everybody, like in a lot of ways, PC hardware went on pause because of the Bitcoin, the Ethereum stuff and the pandemic.
Yeah. And the longer console generation.
Yeah. And a very long console generation that also spanned into the first 3 years of the next console generation for a lot of people. But at the same time, like we're like a 4-year-old mid-level card has ray tracing support now. Right. So I think Alexi is absolutely right that we're going to see, like, I would not be surprised if we see cards that require ray tracing, games that require ray tracing in the next 6 months or a year, whenever. And like that will leave this hardware behind with an asterisk.
Yeah.
And the asterisk is that streaming games from your desktop PC in the other room, if you have a big desktop PC in the other room, is fucking awesome on this thing. Sure. With the also asterisk, you have to have decent Wi-Fi. Yeah. If you're running on an old 802.11n network, it's not going to be great. If you're running on a 6 or 6E or probably even 5 network, because my garage AP is a 5 still, I think it works great in the living room. It's really, really good. I played as much almost all of the Starfield that I played with this on, watching TV, like sitting in the living room at night, hanging out with the fam, just kind of doodling at Starfield. And the experience was really good on the old Steam Deck.
Stream from your PC, you mean?
Stream from the PC. I laid in bed and played Cyberpunk last night. Generally speaking, if I want to play a big AAA game on the Steam Deck and I'm going to be at home, I don't even bother installing it. I just hit the stream button and stream it from the desktop PC that's wired into the network.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I mean, I also live in a house that has a high contention for the big TV in the living room. So, but there is a dock out there. Like I could drop the Steam Deck into the dock and connect a DualSense to it and play that way as well, which I have with the old one. I haven't with the new one as much. I haven't had time to do that. Like I said earlier, I played Diablo 4 native on it using Battle.net. I've played a couple Origin games. I installed Far Cry 3 from the Ubisoft launcher. Like all of the other non-Steam PC launchers work. You can install Epic even on it.
Okay.
The only thing that consistently doesn't work is either stuff that requires a lot of text input, because the on-screen keyboard's kind of a pain in the ass, and you're just not going to want to do that. Like I would never play Baba Is You on this probably because of the text input, right? I'm sure it works. Fortnite, Rocket League, Fall Guys, PUBG, anything that uses easy anti-cheat isn't going to work. Apex Legends works because their anti-cheat's compatible. They made their anti-cheat compatible. I don't know. I don't think it's a good idea, but theoretically you can play Counter-Strike on this thing. That'll work.
Sure.
Steam has a really pretty granular breakdown of what does and doesn't work on each game, partly through cert testing, but partly also through reports from players about things they have problems with. Often a game will have hey, this doesn't run too great, but the only thing that's the problem is you have to manually open the on-screen keyboard to type in your name when you create a character at the very start. And then that's the last thing that doesn't work if it has decent controller support. So generally speaking, it's a, like, you don't get surprises when you're downloading something very often with this. On the streaming stuff, last thing I play a ton of, it's great. I play a ton of indie games on it. It's basically like indie game Switch.
Yeah.
For me.
Yeah.
Like
I was playing Dead Cells machine or something.
Yeah. I play a lot of Dead Cells. I did a complete run through of Hades from start to finish earlier this summer. I do play a lot of Dead Cells. It's funny you mentioned that. I've been playing Jusant. I played Dave the Diver's not an indie game, but it's sorry.
Right.
Sorry.
No, that's, yes, you have taken the correct moral position.
I mean, look, if Nexon bought the studio, I don't know. Anyway, it's complicated.
Well, hey, you're as an independent game developer, you have a valid perspective on this.
Look, I'm not ever going to fault any independent developer that has a game in development and somebody's like, hey, we would like to give you a lot of money and buy your studio. I'm never going to fault. If anybody wants to come buy our studio, give me a call, please.
Sure. It's no longer be independent.
But if we were independent while the game was being made, I might still call that an indie game. Anyways, look, the hardest part of the two hardest parts of game development are making the game and then also the money stuff. Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm. So yeah, like that kind of game runs fabulously on it. The battery life is really, really long. When you get into stuff like Miles Morales or Starfield or Cyberpunk running natively on the box, the battery life is a couple of 3 hours, 2-3 hours, depending on what settings you use. And like if you get into the Steam Deck subreddit, you can get into like they're like mileage hackers telling you exactly what shit you can install and what settings you can flip to make your game go from 3 hours to 2 hours to 3.5 hours. But it's still, there's a limited amount of gas in the tank. The streaming battery life is insane. Like you can stream for 6 or 8 hours. Like when I was playing Starfield, I didn't plug in at all until I was done playing, and then it would charge back up and I would be fine. That streaming stuff used to be kind of fiddly, right? Like for a while there, this summer, there was a bug where the audio would drop out after like 10 minutes and then you wouldn't be able to get it back and you'd have to restart the whole thing on both computers. And like it involved getting up and walking into the office and fixing, and it just sucked. Moonlight and Sunshine, which are the open source implementations of the NVIDIA Game Stream protocol, solved that completely. They're a little bit more fiddly, but not too bad. It's also a much easier way to get non-Steam games working streaming. So if you want to play Fortnite on your Steam Deck, you can stream it from Epic on your PC to the Steam Deck pretty easily. What I will say is, when I tried to stream Cyberpunk earlier this year, it was a pain in the ass, and it ended up with me walking. Like, I say it's fiddly. What I mean is, you often would have to get up and walk into the office, do something on the real computer, and then suddenly it would work. You'd have to switch the game from full screen to borderless, or change the resolution manually or whatever. Now it just sets the settings right, and it starts, and it's like I clicked the play Cyberpunk game button on the Steam Deck, stream it, and it just worked first try out of the box. It handled the launcher stuff well. It switched between the virtual mouse mode and the controller modes when it needed to. Like I could use the touch screen to do input on the launcher. All of the weird stuff that used to be kind of a pain in the ass just worked. So props to Valve for the work on that, because it is much better. It didn't drop the sound after 30 minutes, all of that. I did have to turn HDR on my monitor to get HDR streaming working. I didn't think HDR streaming would ever work, so I was kind of impressed by that.
That's impressive. Over the Valve, the Steam streaming,
not the Valve streaming,
not Moonlight,
not Moonlight.
Wow, yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, and again, that was like, I changed the settings in Cyberpunk to turn HDR on once I turned on the HDR monitor. I assume that if you don't have an HDR monitor hooked up to your PC, you can't stream HDR to the Steam Deck. Which
Cyberpunk HDR did you use? Because it has two, and I'm not sure which one to use. I've never heard of either one of them. I think they are HDR 10 PQ and I think it's PQ, and the other one is SCRGB. I don't know what those HDRs are.
My monitor only supported one of them, so I chose the one that it supported.
Okay, I guess my TV must support two, but they look the same to me.
Oh yeah, and just to test, I did. You can disconnect a Steam Deck and then reconnect to another streaming endpoint. And I connected the HDR Cyberpunk to the old Steam Deck, and boy, was that a mess. Mm-hmm. So it was actually streaming across the HDR, which was kind of nice. And apparently the last thing that I saw this morning when I was doing like last notes is that now it supports external storage. So if you have like a USB SSD plugged into your Steam Deck dock, then you can have a whole host of games that just like when you plug it in, they just show up in your library.
That's cool.
Yeah. So that's the Steam Deck. I think it's pretty good.
Yeah.
If I was buying one today, I would buy one of the OLED ones.
Yeah. For $50, yeah, like we said, for an extra $50, it seems like a no-brainer for all the marginal but significant improvements.
Yeah. And if they sold OLED, if they sold Atomic Purple, or what was the Nintendo GameCube orange color?
Spice Orange, I believe was the name.
If they sold Spice Orange, I would buy a Spice Orange shell for this thing. They couldn't take my money fast enough.
Pumpkin Spice GameCube.
Fuck that. I want Spice Orange. That's Spice Orange is like the Spice Melange, Brad. It's the sleeper must awaken. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's it. I think it's good. I find myself using the Steam Deck. It's not every day, but most days I pick it up and use it for something.
Yeah. In a house where you have a use case for a handheld, it seems like a pretty, if not the handheld to get.
The one thing that I didn't get a chance to do because it hasn't been sunny here, is I was hoping that I could go out and like ride in the car and see if I could use it in the car, because the old one just fundamentally didn't ever get bright enough to use in like a bright car in the summertime. But yeah, that's next, I guess.
TBD. I wrote down the word Steam Deck 2 here. We covered this on the Nextlander podcast a little bit. Was it The Verge? Somebody talked to Pierre-Louis Griffet at Valve and asked just like, hey, what about an actual new Steam Deck with new guts and everything? They gave a very, I would say, an answer that was both very direct and very non-committal, in that they said like, hey, we're always looking at the state of APUs and batteries and like all the things that make up a Steam Deck, but like we don't have any explicit plans yet. But specifically what they said was like, we really value consistency and performance target and battery life, and we're not going to like rush into a second Steam Deck until those those vectors converge in a place that we're happy with on faster hardware. So I think they didn't like say 2 years away, but I think there was some kind of language that was sort of like at least 2 or 3 years before there's hardware that is up to snuff.
I think Lawrence Yang has been quoted. This is the worst way to attribute something, but I have seen Lawrence Yang attributed as saying that you shouldn't expect anything before 2025.
Yeah.
Which like if we're thinking about what the next gate is on what games you'll be able to play on these things, it is, hey, they need an APU that can do whatever min spec ray tracing will be going forward. And that seems like it's a ways off.
Yeah. Seems like a kind of a quiet year next year on some fronts, like no new Steam Deck. Like the rumors are that there will not be a new NVIDIA generation next year. That's going to be 25 as well.
I mean, they're usually like, NVIDIA is, if their stuff is selling well, they'll do an 18-month cycle without hesitation. Yeah. Right. And that's just a little bit of an extension for that.
Yeah. Yes.
I think, I mean, I don't like honestly, the only thing I don't like about this model is that the ergonomics aren't always, it is not super comfortable ergonomically. It is if you're sitting and playing in your lap, but then you're looking down on your head. If I'm propped up in bed, it often puts my wrist in a situation that I don't like.
Yeah, I think even the Switch is that way for me, and this thing is way bigger and heavier. So like, there needs to be like people should make some like handheld pillows.
Well, so I have Switch grips that I bought at Target for like $15 that clip onto the Switch that make it work in bed or in a supine position on the sofa or whatever. And also the Switch has the benefit of you being able to crack those side Joy-Cons off and hold them wherever is comfortable, which this doesn't exactly have. I mean, you could plug in a controller, but that seems dopey.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would like more, like, ironically, I would like more low end on the grippy side. Most of the place to grip is on the high end, but that's where you use you're using those fingers for other things. So you end up in a weird position. But yeah, I think it's pretty good. The touchpads, it's funny. The stuff that I thought was dopey when they announced it, like the touchpads and all that, ends up being incredibly useful, especially in like desktop mode, because it gives you a really nice trackpad surface. So you don't have to try to hit touch targets on like the Linux desktop, which is hard.
Yeah.
It's a remarkable device. My secret hope, and Norm, as I've been using this for the last year and change, this seems like it's a path toward the guts of a VR headset that's standalone / streaming, right? From a desktop PC. And I would like that just because I'd like to see somebody that's not Facebook making a dedicated standalone VR headset.
Like an Index 2 or something.
I would like to see something that you don't necessarily, that you can play untethered and tethered. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Like I think it's pretty clear that the future of VR is untethered.
Yes.
And I think if you don't, I look at an APU and a decent battery life and all that stuff, and I'm like, this is, you could hang this on a belt or put it on the back of your head. This would work.
Now, we have not seen x86 in a VR headset. Those are all ARM based, and there you have much more stringent performance requirements than you do on a handheld. So I don't know.
Think about how nice it would be to play Alex on a standalone headset.
Oh, I know. I get it.
That'd be cool.
Yeah.
There are crazy people, just for the record, that plug docks into Steam Decks and then plug indexes or other VR headsets into the Steam Deck and then backpack the Steam Deck. So,
well, more power.
It's
to
not
them.
impossible. Yeah. So there we go.
Yeah, that thing sounds pretty good.
That is the Steam Deck. I would say it's pretty good. I'm going to reiterate, if you already have a Steam Deck and you buy this, you're going to probably be disappointed. If you do not have a Steam Deck, you should absolutely, and you're going to buy one, buy this one. This is the one to buy for sure.
Yeah.
And that'll do it, I guess, for us this week.
Yeah, cool.
Brad, we've reached the part of the show where we thank our patrons.
Thank you, patrons.
This isn't the last episode of the month, is it?
It is. One more. In fact, we didn't even say it. This would have been an emails episode, but then this hot device landed.
I guess we'll do emails next month. So that means I need to thank 2 tiers of patrons. So that's why I asked.
That's right.
But as always, this is the part of the show where we thank our patrons. So thank you, patrons.
Yes, thank you.
We appreciate everybody who supports the show, whether financially or just by telling your friends and leaving iTunes reviews and stuff like that. But we do offer a very special thank you to our executive producer tier patrons, including our newly upgraded $$ Andrew Slosky, Paddle Creek Games, makers of Fractured Veil, David Allen, James Kamek, Joel Krauska, Jordan Lippett, Just Wedge, Nick Johnston, Pantheon, makers of the HS3 high-speed 3D printer, and Twinkle Twinkie. Thank you all so much.
Yes, thank you.
And since it's the end of the month and we normally do Q&A, we still will thank our associate producer tier patrons, who we also appreciate very much, including Alejandro Navarro, Andre M. Burke, Arthur Geese, Ben Tallman, Eric Frey, Eric Klein, Eric the Fourth, soon to be the first after the Great Eric War. That's 1, 2, 3, 4 Erics. Still no Ericas, but that's okay.
Getting there.
Thanks. The Erics continue to grow. I guess is when maybe we'll have a 5th Eric next month. We'll have to see.
You know, you can write whatever you want for your name on Patreon. So just can put that out there.
Wait. Are you suggesting that $$ is not someone's real name?
I don't know. We'll ask the government.
Okay. Felix Kramer, Graham Branks, Jad Rita, Matt Walker, parentheses, Walkman 8080, close parentheses, Nathan Phelps, Sanchit Kumar, Steve Lynn, Thomas Shea, and Tom Hilton. Thank you all so much. We really appreciate everybody's support. I didn't say this to the front because I'm off my game today, but when you subscribe to the Patreon, you get access to the patron exclusive episodes, and you get access to the Fabulous Tech Pod Discord, which is full of I think the gift exchange stuff is closed now, but like there's just lovely conversations happening all the time. And then look, Brad, did you know, and this is what we should have done the cold open on, but did you know that the children now use Discord mod as a slur?
I saw that being discussed.
Shocking.
Is that like their version of cop?
They are I think the implication is it's the kind of person who wouldn't allow memes in general.
Huh. Okay.
We allow memes in general. We're cool.
Yeah. Yes.
That's why I got called out by a surly teenager when I was out a few weeks ago when I was wearing a Discord partner t-shirt. I know they sent me a hoodie a few years ago that has like Discord partner in huge block letters down the arm.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, what are you, a Discord mod or something? I was like,
oh my God.
I mean, kind of, I guess, but it sounds like this is a bad thing. So I'm going to say not really.
All Discord mods are bad. AdMab?
Bastards.
AdMab?
Yeah, AdMab. Exactly. Our Discord mods are great. And like mostly just shepherd conversations and help people understand when they're mansplaining and stuff like that. So it's a friendly place to chat. We try to make it inclusive for everybody. If we're not, let us know. We would love to hear about it. But lots of good conversations all day, every day, talking about everything from like CPU bracket mounting and how much thermal goo to use to extreme storage solutions and like a good tool to tune your guitar. So
Mr. Scene Drama, you name it.
Is Mr. Scene Drama?
Maybe a little bit.
Oh, I'm going to send a question in for next week.
There's been some weird sniping back and forth on Twitter recently between people working on different projects in the Mr. Sphere.
This is a good reminder to send your emails for next week's Q&A episode to techpod@content.town or to post them in the Question Seeking Answers channel in the Discord. That'll do it for us, Brad. See you all next week.